Lights, camera, and bullshit! Hey guys, the Black Critic Guy back with an all-new top 10 list. And this top 10 list was a request from one of my subscribers, Maladin Kulik. I hope that's how you pronounce your name. If I got it wrong, I apologize. I'm god-awful when it comes to pronunciation. And he requested that I do a top 10 list of the worst Hollywood directors and writers. These are the people that spit and shit on the very name of filmmaking. Just some of the worst of the worst. Now, when I mean the worst of the worst, I'm not talking about like one-time filmmakers or screenwriters that made one bad film and then never did another film, or so bad that they're good films or asylum films, or directors and writers that started off bad but continuously got better as their careers went on. No, I'm talking about people that are continuously bad. Maybe on purpose, maybe by accident, but they continuously shoot out shit upon shit upon shit. And most shameful of all is that they get paid millions to shoot out the shit that they make. And before we get to these pieces of shits, I do have a couple dishonorable mentions, and they are as follows. Oren Peli, the director of Paranormal Activity, and nothing else worth mentioning. Scott Stewart, the director of Legion and Priest. How the hell did this guy even get to make 2 movies? In fact, he made 3 movies. How did they give him more work? What the fuck? And then finally, Paul W.S. Anderson, the guy who helmed the Resident Evil franchise. And now, let's roll the camera on these disgraces to the art of film. Starting off our list in a very hilariously shitty way is my number 10 choice, Ed Wood, a man whose name is synonymous with bad filmmaking. If you want to talk about the father and pioneer of bad cinema, Ed Wood is your guy, with such classic films as Plan 9 from Outer Space, Glenn or Glenda, and Bride of the Monster. His films were notoriously known for their poor and sloppy direction, their terrible and cheap production value, and even worse acting, even when compared to the films of his time. But ironically enough, this man and his poor films are more celebrated and liked today than they were when they originally came out. Not because everyone was blind to the fact that these were great films. No, they're liked in the more ironic way of being so bad that they're hilariously good. I mean, Plan 9 from Outer Space, if I wanted to have a good laugh at a shitty film, that's one of the films I would watch. Though he may be liked ironically now, it doesn't change the fact that he still is a pretty shitty filmmaker. Paving the way for shitty and cheap CG hybrid films of classic cartoons is my number 9 choice, Raja Gosnell. I think that's how you pronounce his name, but if it's not, I don't care, because it doesn't deserve to be pronounced correctly. He's given us such treasured hallmarks as Big Mama's House, Scooby-Doo 1 and 2, Beverly Hills Chihuahua, and wait for it, The Smurfs 1 and 2. This guy, thank you, because that's exactly what we needed. Right? All of his films, from the ones that I mentioned to the ones that I didn't mention, only cater to the lowest common denominator. Childish, sophomoric humor with no weight or no charm to them whatsoever. He just shoots out these films like he's the factory just shooting out some pointless products, putting no effort into them whatsoever. That's the type of filmmaker this guy is. This guy gives a whole new meaning to the phrase child at heart, because that's exactly what he is. He's a child that found a camera and decided to make films that are extremely childish like he is. Riding his way to the bank is my number 8 choice, Akiva Goldsman, the writer of such masterpieces as Batman Forever, Batman and Robin, Lost in Space, and Practical Magic, and also directed his first ever film, I think 2 years ago now, A Winter's Tale, which he also wrote, and I heard that film was atrocious. Now, out of all the choices on this list, this guy is actually quite accomplished and has written some good stuff in the past and present, and actually won himself an Academy Award for Best Adapted Screenplay for A Beautiful Mind. But if you look back at that film, in my honest opinion, one of the weakest elements of the film was actually the writing and the dialogue, which I felt was really weak. But because the way that the Academy works, if they're gonna give it Best Picture and Best Director and almost Best Actor, they kinda have to give it Best Adapted Screenplay too. But just because he's an accomplished writer doesn't mean he can't fall from grace. I mean, after all, he is the guy that gave us Batman Forever and, worst of all, Batman and Robin. I don't care how many Academy Awards you win, I'll never forget that shit. His style of writing, at least to me, has always came off as weak, not presenting some really likable or interesting characters or interesting scenarios or even strong dialogue. Every one of his films that he has written, the dialogue always tends to be the weakest element. I think the only time I felt like he wrote good dialogue in a film was actually the Da Vinci's Code. I actually liked the writing in that film. But everything else, the dialogue is just so wooden. Although he has written some good works here and there, he will be forever haunted by his poor writing and, worst of all, Batman and Robin. Because the Iceman cometh! Halting whatever momentum superhero films had in the early 2000s is my number 7 choice, Mark Steven Johnson, the director of such memorable superhero films as Daredevil and Ghost Rider, both of which are undoubtedly the most forgotten, generic, by-the-numbers, bland superhero films ever made. I'll also add in Fantastic Four, but since he didn't direct those films, I can't really mention that. In the early 2000s, it seemed like the superhero genre was gaining momentum, with such mega hits as X2, Spider-Man 1 and 2, Batman Begins, and Blade 2. It looked like we would finally see some really good and well-received superhero films, and they could bask in the glory of success. But then came Hulk, Fantastic Four, and the two that halted their progression and momentum, Daredevil and Ghost Rider, both helmed by Mark Steven Johnson, the superhero genre killer. And I personally believe, had these two films not been made or have been done a smidge better, the superhero genre would have skyrocketed in the early to late 2000s, instead of having to wait to the late 2000s, early 2010s. And it is about 75% Mark Steven Johnson's fault, as he was helming these projects. He was the one that brought these properties to life, and he did a piss poor job at doing so. And I hope to Jeebus that they don't give Mark Steven Johnson another superhero film to helm. Writing shit after shit after shit is my number 6 choice, Damon Lindelof, the writer of Prometheus, Cowboys and Aliens, World War Z, and recently, Tomorrowland. Now, I actually had very high hopes for Damon Lindelof. He was one of the most prolific writers on Lost, and some of the stories he wrote for Lost were actually some of my favorites, so it looked like he would have a very promising career as a screenwriter in Hollywood, right? Right? Yeah, no. Talk about failing expectations. Damon Lindelof, what happened? You were actually a really good writer for TV, but when you went into film, for some reason, like, a part of your brain switched off and you're like, yeah, I'm just gonna write really sloppily and really lazy. It doesn't matter to me. Almost every single one of the scripts that he has worked on, besides one, which was Star Trek Into Darkness, although I don't know how much he contributed to that script, as there were 2 other writers a part of it as well, have been the weakest part of those films. What was one of the major complaints for Prometheus? The story didn't make sense and the writing was weak. What was some of the complaints for Cowboys and Aliens? The story didn't make sense and the writing was weak. What was some of the complaints for World War Z? Well, that film was a train wreck already, but also the story didn't make sense and the writing was weak. And what was some of the major complaints to Tomorrowland? The story was extremely preachy and the writing was weak. Honestly, Lindelof, from the way that your track record looks, I think you should just stay on TV. Stay with The Leftovers. I heard really good things about that show. And it's on HBO. That's a really good start. Just stay away from movies. You just don't have a knack for writing screenplays for movies. At the number 5 spot, Michael Bay. Do I even need to explain why this guy is a terrible director? Yeah, sure, he makes very mindless popcorn films that I, for one, do enjoy to an extent, but that's the main problem with this guy. He doesn't evolve. He stays with one niche, and that is it. Not only that, but I think he's one of the most disrespectful and stupid directors working in Hollywood today. And the fact that they give him so much money and such a high budget to make films is a spit on the face to some really talented directors out there. He's a man that literally gives no fucks about what type of film he makes. He gives no fucks about treating the audience with respect. He gives no fucks for the source material that he's basing his films on. Nothing. Just no respect, no fucks. And that's what makes him such a bad director. Not only ruining the good name of filmmaking, but taking a huge shit on the spoof genre is my number 4 choice, Jason Freeberg and Aaron Seltzer. The guys that gave us Date Movie, Epic Movie, Meet the Spartans, Disaster Movie, and a bunch of other shit that I don't even want to think about. These guys have no freaking idea how to make a good comedy. All they do is just throw shit at you on screen and hope that you laugh at it. Hey, you want a poop joke? Here you go. You want a dick joke? Here you go. You want a pop culture reference joke? Here you go. You want some slapstick? Here you go. Oh, laugh, laugh, laugh. It's funny, right? It's funny, right? But the thing is, it's not. It is not. It's just desperation to get a laugh from you. You want to have a good comedy? You want to get real laughs? Actually build up your jokes, guys. Don't just throw us slapstick after slapstick, pulp culture references after pulp culture references with no weight to them. And it pains me in my heart to know that they are still making spoof films to this day. In fact, they just released a new one called Superfast on Netflix. And as you can tell, it's supposed to be parodying the whole Fast and Furious franchise. Oh, it's so funny. Look at what we can do. I have not watched it, and I will not. I refuse to watch it. But I cannot believe they are still making films, and they have 2 more coming out this year. 2 more films this year. Who gives them a budget? Like, who actually sits down and say, you know, after all the shitty movies you made and all the bad publicity your films got, what the hell? Here, have $1 million. In fact, have $10 million. Make your shitty film. Who is just throwing away all this money? We could use that money for so much better things, and yet you're giving these fuckers money to make shitty films? Jason Freeberg, Aaron Seltzer, your jokes will only make toddlers laugh, and you just need to burn in hell. That's all I gotta say. Without question, the worst screenwriter working in Hollywood today is my number 3 choice, Ehren Kruger, who I refer to as the franchise killer. Why? Because anytime he jumps on a franchise as a writer, he destroys that franchise forever. He destroyed the Scream franchise when he wrote Scream 3. He destroyed the Transformers franchise, although you could also blame Michael Bay for that. But it was the writing by him that ruined it for 2, 3, and 4. In fact, for 3 and 4, he was the sole writer. And what was some of the major complaints that people had about Transformers 3 and 4 besides the excessive explosions? The writing, about how sloppy, sophomoric, and stupid it was. Hell, in freaking Transformers 4, they spent like an entire scene talking about the Romeo and Juliet law. Somebody actually wrote that, and you wanna know who wrote that? This motherfucker right here. I literally have no idea how this guy continues to get work. Why do people still trust him to write scripts when they have been proven time and time and time again to be really, really terrible? I'm gonna make a solemn vow right here, right now, in this video, that if I ever see this fucker's name in the credits as the writer for the film, I refuse to watch that film. This guy has fooled me enough times to where I don't trust his name and I don't trust his writing, and you shouldn't either. Now, my next 2 choices are quite obvious. I'm pretty sure you all know who they are, and they both are interchangeable, as both of them are considered to be the worst of the worst when it comes to Hollywood directors still working today. But since we're going for my personal choices, the one that I hate the least out of the 2 lands in the number 2 spot, and that is Uwe Boll. Do I even need to explain why this guy is on the list? This guy is notoriously known for his shitty films, and to this day has never made a good film. And where Ehren Kruger was the franchise killer, Uwe Boll was the video game adaptation killer, adapting video games into movies and just ruining and taking away all the charm, fun, and enjoyability of said games. From Far Cry to Posto to House of the Dead to Alone in the Dark to In the Name of the King, he has just made shit upon shit upon shit. He has no understanding of what makes a good film, no understanding of how to make a film in the first place. His writing, his direction, the acting on screen, oh my god, it's just really bad. Uwe Boll or Uwe Boll, however you want to pronounce his name, is the equivalent of a shitty director, and how he continues to make films baffles the ever-loving shit out of me. I mean, he has not made a single successful film. How is Hollywood giving this fucker some money to make films? I don't know. And now here we are. Number one. I'm pretty sure you all know who number one is, as I have not said his name at all in this video yet. This filmmaker aggravated me so much for his poor representation of a beloved source material and franchise that I made a solemn vow that I will never watch any of his films ever again. And you all know who that is. M. Night Shyamalama Ding Dong. The reason that he is number one on this list, not only because of what he did with The Last Airbender, which was disgraceful, but also because this guy had so much potential. He could have been a great director, but then he folded under the pressure after The Signs. He made The Village, which everyone went, meh. Then he made Lady in the Water, which everyone went, what is that? And then he made The Happening, and everyone was like, the fuck was that? That was extremely stupid. And then the final nail in the coffin, at least for me, was The Last Airbender, which was a disgraceful adaptation of a beloved franchise like Avatar: The Last Airbender. It didn't even feel like he put any sort of effort. Just all of his characters come off as emotionless, just spewing out exposition, no sorts of like feelings, no sorts of engagement. And this is not just The Last Airbender, this is most of his films. Go back and watch them, they just seem so unengaging and they don't really care what they're saying. They're very bland and stoic and they talk like this. Oh, watch out kids, we're gonna go hunt aliens. Oh, there's a lady in the water? Oh, that's creepy. Oh, you said there's a monster in the village? Oh, that's weird. Or the hilarious scene in The Happening where Mark Wahlberg is talking to this old woman. He's like, what? No. He refuses to hear out the criticisms towards his filmmaking. He has not changed a single bit. You know, when you're a director, when you're a creator of content, you need to hear criticism so that you can grow and work on your craft and make it 10 times better. It doesn't seem like that's what M. Night wants to do. It just seems like this is my vision and that's it, nothing more. You know, I'm not gonna hear what anybody else says. You don't grow from that. You don't become better from that. You just continue to make the same mistakes. If you're gonna force us to watch your shitty half-ass films for $15, which is how much tickets are costing nowadays, you better be ready for the backlash because you have nobody but yourself to blame. You could improve. You could do better. I know you can, M. Night. But you refuse to listen. You're like a little child going, nah, 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 I didn't hear you, I can't hear you. You don't grow like that. You don't learn like that. And it's because of your unwillingness to evolve as a filmmaker that places you at the #1 spot as one of the worst directors working in Hollywood today. And also, fuck you for what you did to Last Airbender. I'll never forget that. And that, ladies and gentlemen, was my list of the top 10 worst Hollywood writers and directors. And I would love to know what you guys thought about my list. Did you agree with it? Did you disagree with it? Did you feel like I need to calm down? Did you feel like I left any writers or directors out? And let me know who is the worst Hollywood writer or director in your opinion. Comment below and let me know. And stay tuned, I have a bunch of movie reviews coming your way. Paper Town, Pixels, maybe Trainwreck, and a bunch of others. And stay tuned this Sunday, 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, for the final monthly live chat in this house. We're leaving soon. But until those videos come, guys, if you'd like to be a part of the Black Critic crew and not miss out on a single awesome top 10 video, please hit that subscribe button below. Like this video if you really enjoyed it. And I'm Tony Wally II, the rage-filled Black Critic Guy. Till then, peace, YouTube.